Welcome to What is DNS by Julia Forster and Emma Lavelle. What is a domain name server? DNS, or Domain Name Server, resolves the URL that we type into our browsers into an actual IP address. Without DNS, the internet that we know today would collapse.
One way to think about DNS is using something like Google Maps to get from point A to point B. In Google Maps, you type in the address of your friend's house, let's say 123 Walnut Street. Then Google retrieves the coordinates of the address, which allows it to pull up specific directions. You wouldn't memorize the latitude and longitude of every location you need to travel to. Instead, you'll use a street address for reference. In the same way, you won't remember the 32-bit IP address for every website you use, but there has to be a way to find the location of a website. This is where DNS comes in.
To walk you through the DNS process, we'll use a friend as an example. Let us introduce our friend Bob. Bob is hanging out at home, browsing the internet. Bob starts to wonder what happens after I type in a web address and press enter. Well, Bob, after you type a URL into your search bar, DNS is used to get you to the location you want to go to on the internet. Bob types in the URL www.ilovedns.com. Then Bob presses enter. First, our browser will determine if it already knows the IP address for the website Bob has entered. For sites Bob has visited before, unless he's cleared his browsing history, the IP address will be stored in the browser's memory, also known as its cache. The browser asks the operating system if it knows the address of www.ilovedns.com. In this case, since Bob has never been to www.ilovedns.com, his OS does not have this address. Because the address isn't cached, we'll move on to the next step in the DNS process.
The operating system is configured to ask a resolving name server for IP addresses that it does not have stored in its memory. The resolving name server can be thought of as the workhorse for the DNS lookup process. Our operating system asks the resolving name server for the address of www.ilovedns.com. The name server may or may not have this address in its cache. In this case, it does not. However, the resolving name server does know how to reach the root name server, which is the next step in our process. Now the resolving name server will ask the root name server if it knows the address of www.ilovedns.com. Unfortunately, the root name server does not know the exact address of the website, but it does contain information about the .com server. The resolving name server then takes all of this information from the root name server, stores it in its cache, and then goes straight to the .com top-level domain servers. We then ask the TLD servers the same question as before. Does the top-level domain know the address of www.ilovedns.com? The top-level domain servers then respond by saying that they don't know where to find the www. Portion of the URL, but they do know where to find the ilovedns.com name servers. To resolve the final portion of the address, we move to the authoritative name server. The .com and TLD servers determine which authoritative name server to use by looking at the domain's registrar. The resolving name server takes the response from the TLD server, stores it in its cache, and queries the ilovedns.com name servers. At this point, the authoritative name server will return the location of that name. The authoritative name server then tells your browser to go to that specific IP address. The resolving name server then takes the information from the authoritative name server, stores it in its cache, and gives a response to the operating system. The operating system then returns this information to the browser. The browser finally navigates to the correct IP address. The end result, Bob is able to reach www.ilovedns.com successfully.
In summary, Bob typed an address into his browser. The browser searched for the IP address. When it couldn't find it, it asked the operating system. When the operating system couldn't find it, it asked the ISP's DNS resolver server for the address. The resolver then asked the root name server, TLD server, and authoritative name server for information about the IP address. These three worked together to obtain the full IP address for the site Bob wanted to reach and returned it to the OS, which returned it to the browser.
Bob is happy. Thank you, DNS process.